Hi, this is David Williams. I'm here this morning with Traci Phillips. Good morning, Traci.
Good morning, David. It's great to be here.
It's nice to have you. We chatted a little bit before this call, our first time. I've known your husband for many years. It's amazing how many years I've known him, and we've even collaborated together on some stuff. And then I just found out about you, didn't even realize that you were a coach. So talk a little bit about who you are briefly, and then at the end of this, I'll open it more to give your website and social media and things of that nature. But go ahead, before we dive in, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so again, Traci Phillips. I am a leadership and performance coach. I work with business owners and corporate professionals to help them analyze critically, articulate with strategy, and lead with confidence. And really, it's about getting to the core of their leadership style, because everybody has their own unique leadership style. If we try to lead like others, it usually doesn't work well. So I tend to be drawn in and hired to work with leaders who are struggling in their leadership style, and they're looking to define and own what is truly theirs.
I appreciate that brief intro. So with leadership being, a core part of your focus, obviously leaders some leaders will lead differently in times of crisis than they lead in times when things are thriving. And even in times of crisis, I think in times of crisis, would you agree that that's when true leadership comes out? That's the way people handle themselves when things are not so well. That's the sign of a true leader, right? So I want you to dive in. We don't want to make this a doom and gloom call, because we want to give people some encouragement, but talk about some of the things, especially since you mentioned leadership. I'm going to lead with leadership, because so far, a lot of the folks that I've done these interviews with, I don't think I've led with the word leadership yet. So let's take advantage of your core specialty and talk about what you see leaders doing in good times and not so good times, and how you might coach a leader to work through challenging situations, because many of the people watching this are probably small business owners, and they may have a small team to lead, or they may be a team of one, but even a team of one, they still have to have some core beliefs and some things in there. So just walk through that. What I'm going to do is I've been taking notes as I do these. So I'm going to grab a pen and paper and probably look down every now and then and jot some notes on what you're saying. And then we'll come back to some of what you said to expand on it. So I'm going to turn it over to you and just go for it and talk about leadership.
Very good. So one of the things I like to always remind people is we're humans first. So regardless of what, the letters after our name are, CEO, COO, CFO, that we get to look at how you talk about crisis, right? We get to look at how we respond in crisis as a human first. And, that reptilian brain at the back of our head, which is the fight, flight, freeze, part of that is going to kick in when we come across crisis. And so even leaders, that's going to be a part that they get to work with. It's not a matter of shutting it down, because, it's like people saying they want to just dismiss their ego. Good luck. We want to work with it. And that's probably one of the biggest pieces that I work with, with my clients, is on how to integrate and work with, give that ego the thing that it needs to chew on, that's actually going to serve us, as opposed to, putting us in a lot of times, those typical leaders who want to just forge in and, continue to be productive and consider themselves, the go-to leaders. They can push too hard, right? So what I tend to find in these types of times is that we just see an augmentation, kind of a larger than life reaction to what is typically our natural way of dealing with crisis, right? As humans first, again, aside from leadership. Leaders, depending on how long they've been doing it, can have some skill sets and strategies and that under their belt that can help them to do this. But this is something that none of us have ever seen before, right? This is a type of crisis that is traumatizing people in a whole new way. And so we need kind of a different approach to how we're going to handle that. So right now I'm working on things. There's new strategies that I'm kind of innovating as we go, with my corporate clients, especially because that looks different than single business owner at this point to some degree. And so we're just kind of opening up. I'm trying to get them to go back to curiosity, the place we were as a kid. We have to be open and curious, because at the end of the day, they're just like, well, this is going to happen. And you don't know. You don't know it's going to happen. So let's dial it back and let's work with what is right now. So that's, I would say, just in the current environment. And I know that you're making these videos to be evergreen. So, I love what Tony Robbins recently said about the time we're in. He says, we've been here before, we'll be here again.
Yeah.
As human beings over time, crisis happens. And so really what I think is extraordinary about this time is where we've been through similar times in the past, we didn't have the technology we have today. I mean, for us to be able to pivot so quickly and to some extent bring our day-to-day physical lives immediately online, where we can continue to have, some of the quote unquote normalcy that we had before, is extraordinary. Let's capitalize on that, right? Let's look at where we can use that. But the one thing I want to say about leadership is the major shift that I've seen is from this idea of hierarchy of leadership to collaborative leadership, right? What I call the conscious leader, right? The fully owned leader, right? The one that is not just with the hat of, this is what I'm expected to do in the position I'm in, but the person who's bringing their whole self forward and has that compassion. I think one of the biggest things we see now today in a lot of articles and various things that are posted out there is that the types of leaders, or what they're finding, the best leaders now have not just high IQ, they have high EQ, right? The emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence. They're able to manage how they are emotionally, not just how they act physically. So that, these are some of the trends and things I think this time for me is incredibly exciting. I was telling my husband, I was made for this time. The boot camp of life for the time we're in right now. So for me, not to disqualify, the difficulties that we're all navigating right now, but we have tremendous time to really rewrite a lot of how we've done things that have, maybe not been serving us collectively as well as they could, to really dig into those and say, well, how can we do it differently, with intention and consciousness. So it's an exciting, time in my world. It's definitely constantly changing. So you have to be both flexible, and again, like that, keeping that I don't know attitude. What can I do right now? What would I like to be, in the future intentionally? Where would I like to be placing myself? Where am I kind of trying to navigate this ship? But also too, if things come up, it's the difference between the lens of expectation and the lens of acceptance. If we're going along as we have planned and suddenly things shift, what are we going to do? Because that to me defines the leader, right? What you do in the times when things are not going as planned, to your point earlier. And so we are already in this time. The time is asking that of all of us. We're all leaders to some degree. And so what are we going to do with it? Because we can create, I always say that creation energy is messy, right? It's messy. Anybody who's ever gone into an artist studio, it's messy, right? And yet the most beautiful things come out of that mess. And I think from the hope perspective, I hope people can see that if we take away and strip away the storyline, what it all symbolizes is actually quite tremendously exciting. So
it's interesting you talk about, there's some things that you say in there about that exciting, for example. For me personally, and I think for a lot of us, in times of crisis, it gives you a time of reflection and thinking about, okay, this situation, because I remember 2008 and the recession, and there was crisis going on then. As a business owner, I've experienced that and remember what that was like. And then obviously for many years now, we've had it pretty well once we got past that. So there are a lot of business owners, a lot of leaders that may have never experienced a crisis, and they're given an opportunity during that crisis to really test themselves and test their leadership skills. And I think we have to be able to adapt during challenging times and say, what are we going to do differently and how are we going to get through this? What I want you to do now is talk a little bit about when things are thriving, because true leaders, I think from what I know about leadership, I'm not a leadership coach, but true leaders are looking into the future, down the road. And as a small business owner, one of the things that I can admit here is that when things are well, I have a tendency to get a little complacent and not really think about like, what's my next move and how am I going to get like truly to the next level, because, oh, things are pretty good. The phone's ringing, inquiries are coming in, we're staying busy, we're doing stuff, working some long days here and there. And, you know, I'm just not really thinking as much about that. And I'm just being honest with it, that 2-year plan, that 4-year plan, that 6-year plan, whatever, you know, down the road. And I know good leaders really need to be thinking ahead with a vision of like, where am I taking this company? We're the most profitable that we've ever been. We're growing. We've doubled in size. We've done this. We've done that. Talk about those leaders that take things to the next level when things are just would you think everything was great, right? And you're not in crisis mode. You're in thriving mode. What a leader does when things are thriving.
That's a great question. Well, so what I find, and certainly is true of my clients, is that true leaders have two main characteristic traits. They're visionary and they're growth oriented. Right? I do believe kind of at the core that all human beings are naturally growth oriented. We may lose that through our conditioning and our experiences and our lack of, you know, belief in our capacity. But I think we come in naturally, you know, kind of innately born, you know, to be growth oriented. I mean, we grow. So that makes me believe we're that way. But leaders are aware of this, right? I know throughout my life, people would say, when do you turn off? When do you turn off? Because I was always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? You know, and this is good. And I think part of it is what I try to also teach are, you know, two things, because it's not just about what's next. It's about, you know, also celebrating what we're doing. Let's look at what's working, you know, and let's really, you know, take the time, like you said, during these times, you know, it's about self-reflection. How can we be reflective and growth-oriented, visionarily growth-oriented at the same time? You know, and so the one thing I'll say is how leaders do this is they have coaches. I mean, it's not just because I'm a coach. I mean, I have coaches. I've had coaches since I started coaching. I had coaches before as an athlete. You know, we're human. We can't get a bird's eye view of our own life. So as a very busy, you know, this is what I you know, tell my clients, are like, I'm just not doing, give yourself some slack. You're doing all these other things. This is what you hired me for, right? This is why you have coaches. This is why you have consultants. This is why you pay these people to be in your left or right pocket. It's because we're here to help facilitate what you just talked about. Is those, okay, where are we going to slow this down? How are we going to, you know, kind of open this up and analyze it a little bit so we can pick the pieces apart of what the success is now, success model now. And as we start to expand and as you tend to grow into that vision that you have, how do you, you know, foresee that things might need to shift and change? But one of the things that I see time and time again when I'm brought into companies is that a lot of them weren't intentional in developing themselves, which in other words, you know, it's like building a home without a foundation, right? They had this grand idea or they're really good at something. And they're just like, I'm going to just, you know, hang my shingle and go out there and do it. And the core things that allow the foundational support for that company were never really attended to. And so a lot of what I do and my job is to, you know, I mean, of course I stay in my lane. There's certain things I do well. And beyond that, one of the things as a coach is to bring in other people, is to say, okay, here's an operational specialist, right? We need to look at your operations and your systems because they don't exist, or they exist, but they're completely unintentional and they're just not working fluidly. You know, is to help people see what they can't see. And I think especially when I come in, my business clients tend to be stage 2 growth, which means they've gotten to this kind of place of, like you're talking, thriving, but suddenly all the gaps start to show, right? All of those leaks start to really come to the surface, and they're trying to band-aid it, right? They're trying to kind of stick the finger in the dike type of thing, and like, well, we need to core it down and look at why this is, right? And I start with core values. If you can run some of the most profitable and successful, and I mean from a place of sustainability, right? So everything is running internally really, really well, are those companies that actually are run by core values, right? I sat down with one individual who's in a company here in North Carolina, and I was introduced to him because I was fascinated with him, reading about him, because he had created this model, and I thought, I need to sit down and pick this man's brain. What had he done that had allowed him to be so almost with ease, right? The natural growth of this company in a very tough industry, right? In sustainable energy, which now is becoming more of a thing, but when he started was not. How did he grow so easily? And when we sat down, he said, I'll tell you, my wife and I started this company in our living room, and we started with a set of core values. And even to this day, we hire and fire by these values, on board, off board, and everything is determined by these core values. And even the way their offices were set up, you saw the core values on the wall, but everything was symbolic and representative of those core values. And so we can be that intentional. Is everybody going to be? No. Does everybody have to be? No, you don't really have to be. But the closer you can be, in that intentionality and really setting that foundation and having those people around you who are going to support you, because I think we were raised to be, it's a badge of honor to be self-made, right? When in reality, I don't like that term, because none of us are self-made. First of all, we didn't make ourselves, our parents did. And second of all, we've always had someone there to open a door for us or support us or whatever. So we're not self-made. And I think we need to understand that principle, is that there is no shame in support. The best leaders, the ones who we put on these pedestals and say, wow, that person's amazing, they have had so much support in their life. You just may not see all the supportive people behind them, right? But they have their entourage, and they continue to for a reason. That allows them to be those leaders because they can just focus on that zone of genius, right, that they came here for, to be that growth-oriented visionary. And they have the people in the right seats to support the rest of the operations around what it is that they're doing.
That's a lot of what you said, just even in your personal life, because one of the things that I want to get involved with some of the people that I interview is talking about personal development. A lot of these that I've done so far was a combination of both personal and business. A lot of what you said can be incorporated in the personal life as well, as far as developing, because you've got to surround yourself with supportive people, right? You can't, if you want to, whatever you want to do in life, and you said a lot of really good stuff in there: core values, foundation, surrounding yourself with supportive people. Those are some key takeaways that I got in what you just said. You covered a lot in there. So what I want to do now is reel us home. In just a moment, at the very end, I'll give you an opportunity to give your website and things like that. But what I want you to do is just share any closing thoughts with everything that you've shared today. What are some points that you would like to leave the audience with to think about? And I don't want to necessarily, you don't have to say the things that I just said, but I like core values, foundation, support. Those are some things that I just, like I said, took away from what you just said. But what's some things you'd like to leave folks with as some final thoughts for their own leadership skills or even their personal life?
So my main message is focused on coming home, right? And I think it's very interesting at this time, with our quarantine, we were asked to come home, right? We were asked to come into our homes, stay put, and let's let this thing ride. And, I see coming into our homes as symbolic to this home, right? This space that each individual lives within. And, we've been so conditioned to look outside of ourselves for security. And we're in a time where a lot of those systems that we have relied on are not meeting our needs. And that's really scary, right? And I think it's also for us to see that that's not where it's at, right? We're not meant to ground externally. We're meant to ground internally. We're meant to find our solid self, own who we are, why we're here, what's our legacy, And those are the things I work with clients on, is defining that, right? Because if we have a vague understanding, it's just kind of somewhere up here in our brain, but we haven't owned it. We can't own it unless we've defined it. And we can't define it unless we've, become aware of it, right, at a foundational level. And so I would say, take this time. I mean, you made that great point of being self-reflective. Take this time, because I think the biggest push is, I got to fix it. I got to fix it. What am I going to do? Because again, we're so productive conditioned. Like, how am I going to keep being productive? We're not human doers. We're human beings. Being within ourselves for a while. I mean, I think some of the best support systems I have right now, I have a girlfriend who's a hypnotherapist, and she does this stuff where she takes you in and like, what is that feeling? She's like, where do you feel it in your body? Like, it's in my stomach. Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? I mean, really working with those sensations in our body. I've had some of the most amazing ahas that trace back into patterns throughout my life, that if I hadn't taken that time with that support to really analyze and look at and figure out, because we have all the answers within, and we just think they're supposed to be out here. When I ask my clients something like, what do you think? Like, it doesn't matter what I think. What do you think? What do you feel? What do you sense? We just again have been taught to look outside for the answers, to look outside for the support, to look outside for the grounding. And I think this time is showing us that that's not where it's at. And so I would tell people, take this time, because it's a gift. I mean, I know it doesn't feel like one, because those productive human doers in us, are like, I can't do the way I'm supposed to do, and this is scary, and I see just things going away. And in reality, if we follow the storyline, that's how we're going to feel. But if we strip it away and we look at, wow, what if this time were really about something else? What if this time really were a gift? How would I have to look at this time in order to see it as a gift? And then all of a sudden we're spending more time with family and with friends, and again, alone and in nature and exercising. I didn't know so many people. I used to be the only one out walking. Now it's like everybody's out walking in my neighborhood, and it's lovely. It's beautiful. We're supposed to experience this. So I'd say, take the fear and transform it into faith, that this time is here as a gift, right? You can't be in fear and faith at the same time, right? And I don't necessarily mean spiritual faith, right? That is a big part of it for a lot of us. But, for people who don't feel like, oh, well, I'm not religious or I'm not spiritual, have faith in yourself. I think this is testing our capacity as human beings more than anything ever has in our lives, at least at this point. And so have faith that, what if this were a challenge to show my capacity to myself, right? What if it were? How would I look at this differently? How would I go about my day-to-day differently? How would I deal with maybe fears and triggers that pop up for me differently? And really reach out for those supports. I mean, this is not the time to do it alone. And I know that some people out there say, but I don't have any. Well, what if you did, right? I always, when I ask a question to a client, well, what do you feel about that? Well, I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would it be?
Right.
So we can ask ourselves that question, because there's that immediate reaction of, I don't know. But what if I did know? Now what? What do I see now? What do I sense now? So that's what I would love for your viewers to take away from today.
That was a fantastic closing. You left us with a lot of good stuff. You've made a lot of great points in this. And I want to thank you for joining me today and being a part of Hope Now 2020. What I'm going to do now is give you permission, and I kind of close a lot out. I realize that my guests are not on here to promote themselves, where it's all about giving back. I'm trying to give back. You're trying to give back, and I get that. But I do like to let my guests know that, hey, I'm giving you permission to tell who you are and what you do a little bit deeper. So provide your website URL, mention how people can find you on social media. So you've got my permission so that people don't feel like you're giving them a sales pitch. So I'm going to let you do that before we say our final goodbye.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm really glad to have that opportunity, because one of the things I do want viewers to know is that all of my work starts with a complimentary session. And I open that up now, not to say, hey, come work with me, but if anybody's out there really struggling and just some of these things resonate, and I can be a support, in that conversation to just even get them back on track in some way, or help give them a resource that can help them in some way. I love to be able to give that. And it's something I do anyway. So whether you are interested in coaching or whether you just, feel like I don't have any support around me, and, if this person's available, I mean, I'm available. So that's what I want to say to your viewers. The best way to contact me is actually through my website. My company is The Innate Coach, and the website is theinnatecoach.com. I have a lot of, I always believe that it's great to get to know people kind of that's what's wonderful about social media, is we can kind of, eavesdrop and look in and, be those voyeurs in somebody's life. Is that someone I really want to take time to connect with? Because I do believe in discernment. I do believe that not, everybody is going to be the right fit for us right now. And to really take that time to see if that's what you want. And so that's a great place to find me. My writing is there, my blog posts and my offerings, but more importantly, if they click on contact, they can get in touch with me and schedule, that time just to talk. And then I'm on social media. So I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and I can be found there as well.
That's great, Traci Phillips. I appreciate it. I went ahead and mentioned your last name again. That way anybody looking for you on LinkedIn can look for you by Traci Phillips. But one of the things that I will do that I've been doing in the description of the video and the description of the podcast is I'll have a link to your website so people can find you that way. And I appreciate you being with me today and sharing this great advice. And with that, I will say thank you and have a fantastic day.
Thank you, David. This was such a blessing, and I really love what you're doing. So this was an honor to be a part of it.